Hello everybody, my name is Shortline614. Welcome back to episode 9 of Shortline Space Program. In the last episode, we launched Minmus Express, and in this episode, we are going to be continuing that mission. Not getting it done today, but we're going to get it most of the way done. Obviously, in the last episode, we launched it, we brought it out to Minmus. I deployed my relay satellite in a retrograde orbit because I'm stupid. And then we landed 2 landers, one at the poles, one at the North Pole, one at the South Pole. Now, of course, we have 2 more landers that we need to land at various locations, places that I'm calling the Ice Cream Flats and Ice Cream Highlands, because, well, Minmus looks like a giant ball of ice cream. A dirty snowball or giant ball of ice cream. So, this is a part of the mission where I kind of started to phase out. I was kind of half doing the mission, half checking my phone. So, I didn't realize that, hey, I need to get into a prograde orbit before I end up doing my plane change to get into a properly inclined orbit. So what I end up doing is I end up having to do all of this, and it's rather boring stuff, you know. You've seen it a million times, but I have this here just to prove that I actually did it. So now it is time to get into an equatorial orbit, and obviously I begin that burn, and you know, it doesn't take a whole lot of delta V, maybe about 100 delta V in total at maximum. But I do end up getting into the right orbit. It requires a bit of tweaking, but I eventually get into an orbit that I'm satisfied with. You know, adjusting the inclination, whatever. And then, in order to land our 2 next probes at Site 2 and 3, I think, we need to get into a very low orbit around Minmus, about 20 or so kilometers. I probably could have landed them, the landers, from entirely up here. They do have a lot of delta V, way more than I actually need for this mission, but it's good because we can have more accuracy coming in from orbit. So we get down to 20 kilometers, and that engine proceeds to do its burn to get into its well, not final orbit, but an orbit that's close to where we want it to. Now it is time to send down lander number 3, and this is going to be going on the onto the Ice Cream Flats, which are the lowlands in Minmus, the large stretches of flats that are at the sea level. So what I try and do is I try and aim directly for the target, but I eventually end up giving up and just saying screw it. But not before I waste a bunch of fuel trying to get to the proper location. And as I said, not that it really matters. I had plenty of delta V to undertake this landing anyways. So, as you can see, I'm trying to get as close to that, the marker, and as close to that little peninsula area, I guess, because these flats are on sea level, close to that peninsula kind of area as I can. But I eventually kind of give up and just saying, well, it's all the same anyways. No need in landing in a specific spot. Because, you know, these landers aren't meant to go to super specific areas. They're just supposed to be landing in a general area that we can go down, we can explore, and just take a look at things. But I do end up deploying those landing gear, and I slowly float down to the surface. And we land. There we go. And now we take some pictures of the featureless surface of Minmus. This specific area is pretty featureless. Nothing but those mountains in the distance, but beneath that ground is a whole bunch of ore, which is why we're landing here, because once we get our miner up here very soon, we'll begin to... That will be very useful in the future for our fuel. And I zoom out, and, you know, Minmus is rather small. But, now it's time for the fourth and final lander, landing around the area which I'm calling the Ice Cream Highlands, because it's the highlands of the Ice Cream Moon. But first of all, it's in the night, so I actually need to warp around a little bit until I get into at least somewhat around daytime. And you've seen this before, obviously. The last time that one of those will be skipping off the little apparatus we have there to get everything on the probe. But I warp around a bit more. And the spot that we landed, that we picked, it's on this giant plateau area, right? But it's right next... It's a giant plateau area, but in the kind of center, as you can see, there's some valleys over there. Which, this area isn't particularly rich in ore, it's just that the terrain and having the valley there is particularly interesting to me. So, we just do the standard thing. At this point, I'm like, I want to get... I ended up landing somewhere that's fairly close to actually where I wanted to be. And of course, we can use those rovers to explore much of this later on, or do we? Well, we'll get there when we get there. There's a lot of rover shenanigans, you know, coming up very soon. But this area, which is a lot more featured, there's a lot more terrain, there's rocks. Nothing much beneath that surface, although there is some bit of ore. We do manage to land, and this will patiently wait for a rover to arrive and check out the area more. But Minmus Lander 4, Ice Cream Highlands, so that's all of our Minmus Landers done. Of course, we have those two rovers we still need to send down to the surface. And take a look around, it's right next to that valley. This might be good for like a science base or something. But anyways, I switch back to Minmus Express in orbit around Minmus, of course, and we deploy one of our rovers. Now, these rovers, they're very small. They're just using the base rover bus, and they have a sky crane, which is particularly overpowered for what we need to do. Those are going to drop them on the surface, and then the sky cranes are just going to land themselves, and I don't know. They only have a limited amount of power and whatnot, and they don't even have their own antennas, so they're just gonna sit on the surface once their mission is done. But I want to land this thing at site number 1, because site number 1 and site number 2 are very similar. There's in that valley area, there's on the east side there's a lot of ore, on the northeast, and then the southwest area, the area that we're landing, there's also a lot of ore, but there's a gap in between. And there we go, there's Minmus Express down there, or what's left of it. And obviously those engines for some reason are the loudest things in the entire game. I don't know why they're so loud. I hope their equivalent in Kerbal Space Program 2 isn't gonna, you know, mess it up or something. I hope they're a lot quieter. Those engines, KSP2 equivalent. But we do end up coming down somewhere near... at first I thought I was going to come down on the side of the hill, but I don't end up doing it. And as you can see, that rover also has a little scanning surface module. I probably could have designed these rovers better for something that you will see very, very soon. So obviously coming down about 500 meters above the surface, I begin to use the engines to slow this thing down, and I just want to hover. I want to hover like a couple meters above the surface, and then I'm going to use the disconnect the rover, and it's going to fall the last 5 meters to the surface. So I get out that point, and then I slowly, I get down, and then I disconnect, and that rover goes, it starts to go off and starts to drive away. And while I could have crashed this thing into the surface of the Minmus, I decide to just kind of land this, had a bit of trouble. And I end up disabling this thing. We can always come back and reactivate and crash if somewhere not, but it has docking ports, so it might be useful in the future. Sky Crane 1, and now we switch to this rover. Now, I started having a lot of trouble with this rover because for some reason, first of all, the wheels were inverted. Second of all, this thing really likes to drift, as in, this thing is incredibly hard to control. I've noticed smaller rovers tend to be a lot harder to actually drive around. It may look like it's fairly easy to drive around in this thing, but I can assure you that it is not. There's a little rock in the background, I guess, you know. This area is not so featureless after all. And for some reason, the brakes on this thing wouldn't... it takes this thing forever to brake. So I end up flipping this thing over. Because this thing likes to drift around so much and so hard to actually drive. It starts to bounce and hoping that Jesus will land on its feet, and no, it doesn't. It lands, it falls over, and I'm like, alright, I don't want to send out another one of these. So I just decided, I started rocking this thing back and forth, so I just decided, fuck this, I'm using cheats. My hope is that I would set the position close to where it is on Minmus, and then, you know, kind of drop it back on its wheels. So I fiddle around with the set position, and I end up positioning it on some kind of slope halfway around Minmus. And then somewhere that's very far up north on Minmus. So I'm like, alright, I just need to adjust the latitude down slightly, and then I adjust myself on a hill again, and then I get the area where I want. Now, you have to be very careful about actually easing this thing in too much, because if you don't ease it in properly, it might bounce off the surface, and then you might have to do it all over again. Heck, it might even crash, like there, and the entire rover blows up. But luckily, I had that quick save. And as you can see, I keep trying to adjust it. I try and get the proper area again. And I do end up doing it. And then I ease back down on the surface. I quick save. And then I try to fiddle with this thing to make it actually run properly. But as you can see, this thing really likes to drift. And you basically have to orientate yourself very slowly in the direction you want to go, and then you have to drive. This is something that I've had a problem with before with other rovers. In that specific case, it was because the center of mass wasn't, you know, center of the rover, which is kind of necessary. But I've noticed that these smaller rovers tend to be a lot less controllable. Like, me and my friends were messing around in Luna multiplayer, and we decided to take Rovers to the Monarch, which that's going to be a video coming soon, maybe. And what we decided to do was, one of my friends, he made a super small rover a lot like this, and it was incredibly hard to control. So, as you can see, it's just me fiddling with random things, and I eventually say, screw it. I'm just going to take this thing on a bit of a test drive. And as you can see, this thing wants to drift. This thing wants to drift a lot, and that really does suck. So, which means in the future, when I do take Rovers to the Mon, or, you know, probably the Mon next time, they're going to be a lot bigger Rovers that are going to be a lot easier to control. But I do eventually, my first idea is, maybe I can drive the 3 kilometers back to that our little stage, just to give this thing kind of a test drive. You know, stuff like that. And as you can see, I drift around a lot, and that really does suck. But I do get out that surface scanning module to look for Look for an area with particularly high concentration of ore. And, yet again, I fiddle around with the controls again and all the things. Please, if anyone can tell me how I can make this thing work, what controls, what statistics do I need to do, then, please, ask me. And then I flip over again, start bouncing along the surface. I think I land, and then I just say screw it, I just quick load again. And then I have to adjust the controls again. Minmus rovers are a real pain. I've noticed Mun rovers, there's a lot less gravity on Minmus, so you have to be a lot more careful about them. Small rovers on Minmus is quite the experience. But I do manage to just kind of give up, and I do start driving towards that that other probe, that our lander from before. And I take some screenshots of the rover gliding across the featureless surface of the Minmus Flats. Which, it's great if you want to build a base, you know, because the only thing you have to worry about is the curvature of the planet, of the moon. Actually, because that's the only thing you have to worry about, because as I said, Minmus is relatively small. That's only 15 kilometers away. That'd be a lot bigger of a distance around the Mun. But 15 kilometers on Minmus is like, that's not far at all. It's a great distance on Minmus, but on the Mun it wouldn't be as big. But, as you can see, I do end up drifting. I do end up kind of drifting into one location. I just kind of give up later on. But, anyways, that's Minmus Express Part 3. In the next episode, we'll do more epic things, like landing the other broken rover. So, thank you all for watching. Please, if you're on YouTube and BitChute, like, subscribe, and comment. I do Twitch streams on YouTube and Twitch fairly often. Join the Discord server if you want to talk to me about stuff. And stay tuned for the next episode of Shortline Space Program. And we'll end on me, flipping out again. But, I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.